Welcome to Conversations, Lehman College's series of discussions with major theater and musical figures of our time. Our guest today for the second of a two-part chat is Charles Jordan, Executive Director of American Opera Projects, who is joined today by the passionate American soprano Lauren Flanagan. Welcome to you both.
Yes.
It's so delightful to see you here today, Lauren. I wanted to say a word about that beautiful piece, The Tempest, by Lee Hoybee, and with his librettist Mark Schulgasser, based on the Shakespeare play. It's just amazing to me that a piece like that was the world's premiere of the piece. Why that isn't being done in every major opera house in the world is beyond me.
It was very popular in the 80s when Des Moines Metro Opera did the world premiere, and then it just really sort of fell out. I have no idea why, but it really just kind of went back on the shelf for some reason.
Yeah, and now there's a new version. I think it's maybe 20% trimmed and tightened, and it's a fantastic work. I agree. I'm so glad
it's unbelievable.
You got to see it and hear it at purchase.
Lauren, you are an original. You are you've been called the Adrenaline Diva by Newsweek. You are a truly dramatic soprano who also has a sense of humor, which is unusual in dramatic sopranos. And while you sing plenty of the normal operatic fare, you seem to do more than your share of contemporary works. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, yeah.
Why are you so drawn to, what makes you so different?
Well, I don't think I'm different. I think that I'm curious. I'm theatrically curious, and maybe that's slightly different than sort of the average bear. But, you know, I got early training at ACT in San Francisco, and when I went to Boston University and met some crazy, interesting street theater people there. And when I moved to New York, I met Anne Bogart right away in 1985. And so my experience of theater, which began in San Francisco when I was very little, just got longer and richer, you know, the older I got and the more places I went. And I think it's just a kind of an intellectual curiosity that just sort of put me on a path, and it's kind of a nice path, actually.
And you were involved in, you should pardon the expression, straight theater.
As much as I could have, yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to only opera.
Right, and everybody kept saying, you know, your singing voice is good. And so after a while, it, you know, the light bulb went off, and I thought, oh, well, maybe that'll get me east, is I'll pursue music.
So it didn't, you didn't make that big a separation between opera and the rest of
No, I never have, no.
Right, that's unusual.
Yeah, I never had that moment where I thought, and I was 11 years old during Flora and the Turn of the Screw with San Francisco Opera, and I still thought it was, I didn't know it was opera, I still thought it was theater, and I thought that's the path that I really was going to go down, was a theatrical path.
I had very similar experiences. I've never drawn a line between, my plays always had music in them. I just didn't think of it as a different kettle of fish.
Well, the great actresses, you know, Kim Stanley, I mean, those are the people that really influenced me and made me want to be on the stage. It wasn't until later, until I was, you know, a teenager, but I mean, like in the late teens, that I had a few experiences in San Francisco where I was really moved by something, and I couldn't explain what it was that moved me. You know, I heard Pavarotti and Ricciarelli do Louisa Miller. The Bolshoi did Pique Dame, and I was wonderfully and horribly moved in an inexplicable way. And so I think there was always something in the back here that, you know, was eager to absorb what that was. And then when those doors opened much later, it was easy to walk in.
Right. Charles, at the end of the last show, you were telling us how Lauren is now involved with your organization. Could you recap that just a little bit, please?
Well, yes, we're thrilled that she's been doing, I think, the second of 8 weeks of classes for singers. And it's not vocal classes, they're acting classes.
It's vocal classes surreptitiously, you know, it's so that I don't want to beat a dead horse, so I'm getting at how to energize your singing in a different way.
Through acting?
Yeah, basically. Through awareness, through movement, through outside, you know, opera singers tend to work from the inside out. The thing I love about Anne Bogart's company, and it's a company I've worked with since 1985, so it's training that I've had inside me for a very, very long time now. They can access that process of working from the inside out, but they are largely a company that takes the things that happen outside of us and ask it to inform the characters we're playing. So it could be what you just did, like the turn of a head. Instead of planning on something and then, oh, missing the turn of the head, how does the turn of the head influence the way I say this or my breath before I sing this, you know? How do, you know, it's...
And that specificity that she's talking about as a performer, I think totally relates to musicians, singers, and instrumentalists. For example, the recital format. I mean, it's a format which is in trouble right now. People don't go to classical recitals where you see a, you know, person in an evening gown standing next to a piano anymore.
Right.
That used to be a very common way of taking in music. That's now much, much less, you know, interesting to a young audience. But I think this can be solved by training the singers to be so aware of their bodies so that they know and can actually give a sense to the audience that they're standing next to the piano for a reason. You know, they're actually behind a music stand with intent and actual craft.
I mean, realistically, Leontine had had years of standing next to a piano before she publicly stood next to a piano and offered up the music she was offering. And she had had years and years and years, and it's just the music business isn't really like that anymore. And so what I've always liked about Anne's training and the City Company in particular is that they work in a way that allows you to walk into any circumstance and right away start to understand the architecture, the space, the way chairs are set, the way, and to create, to sort of give you the kind of an inner life technically that Leontine brought after 30 years. That Leontine or Jesse Norman brought after 30 years of standing next to a piano. We just don't work like that anymore. We aren't staying in a studio with our teachers and with the conductor for 25 years singing, you know, on die musique or, you know, foray. It just doesn't happen anymore.
I do notice the song cycles of John Coriano, the recent one based on the Bob Dylan songs, and David Del Tredici's wonderful songs recently have been wildly theatrical.
Yes.
And these were song recitals that blew everyone's mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that the kind of approach you're talking about, the more theatrical versions of
I actually don't care what they do with it. I just care that they give it the level of integrity and intensity that we would have expected from, but in a different way, from Leontine or from Judith Raskin, let's say. You know, people who are just wonderful recitalists.
Thomas Hampson still does.
Yeah.
Or take
well,
it to the...
That's a beautiful example.
Take it to the metaphor of like a rock band.
Right.
You know, a rock band, you're interested visually as well. Yeah. Why are you interested visually? Because the people are doing things very naturally or very, you know, over the top or very excessively.
And they've gotten moribund in the...
And singers tend not to even think about that. They just
well, you have
all
to be open
voice.
to criticism, and as singers, we're not really that open to criticism, I'll be honest with you.
A very good example of what you're talking about is again, a Lee Hoybee piece, Geographies and Selves, which we're going to show next. Libretto. Mark did the libretto on that one?
Yeah, these are adaptations of Elizabeth Bishop poetry. Actually, the adaptation by Mark takes the character of Elizabeth Bishop as a poet giving a recital of her poetry, but then cutting away to what she's really like after, after hours, kind of like what's
singing this? I don't have the credit for that.
Oh my gosh, is this Jennifer Dudley? I think
so.
I think it's mezzo Jennifer Dudley.
Would you please roll it?
My grandfather said to me, as we sat on the wagon seat,
It was hard to believe that is the same singer.
Yeah,
She's pretty great, though.
Jennifer.
That's
She's
right.
not just anybody. She's pretty great.
Now, the both of you have worked presenting American works to non-Americans. Have you?
I mean, traveling with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you, Lauren?
Well, I did Midsummer Marriage in Germany, but that's, I mean, Michael Tippett's a British composer, so, but that was an interesting project to put over to a to a German
So
audience.
English. the feeling
It's
is that-
such an English piece,
Yeah.
yeah. But I've also done Philip Glass and things like that with orchestras in Europe as well.
What is
and-
their reaction to it?
To American work?
Yeah.
There's a huge thirst for it,
Yeah.
I think.
A huge thirst?
Yeah, I did a piece by Bob Beezer called The Heavenly Feast with the Bruckner House Orchestra in Linz with Dennis Russell Davies, and it was a huge, huge, resounding success over there. Philip Glass wrote a symphony for me to do, Symphony No. 6, and we did the premiere there as well as Carnegie Hall, and it was the applause was deafening at the end. It was really quite a special experience bringing Philip Glass to an audience that wasn't that familiar with Philip Glass.
The Darkling project we did in Poland last year, the audience was packed. The theater, you couldn't get a seat. And afterwards we announced there's going to be a 5-minute pause and then we'll have a talk back with the creators. Nobody left their seats, which was really wild. Here in New York, people, flee for the streets when you have a talk back. But there, not a single person got up. I didn't know whether the doors were locked or something. I was a little worried why they weren't getting up.
I don't want to go there.
It's an odd metaphor for the dark, yeah.
They love hearing what's going on over here.
I don't think Americans know this, that we have, that our works can be so appreciated abroad. And I tend to think that this country has looked down on our own operas.
Yes, I think. I also think that what people don't understand is with these incredible blockbuster films, especially these like the 300 and these things, people are used to a kind of a soundscape that they have no idea is really much further out there than what they would hear a symphony orchestra play, for instance, or what an opera company would do. And I think it's a very interesting discussion when I'll do something like Luciano Berio or someone like, or Virgil Thompson. People say, oh, that music, and I'll say, well, did you see The Hobbit? Or did you see Spider-Man? Because the musical language in there, it's always filled with clanks and twists. Our ears are so much richer now, and we're used to digesting a huge body of sound that makes really The Ghost of Versailles, for instance, almost sound like Mozart now. To some people, yes. Oh my gosh, yes, yeah.
Also, scores of American composers for films are played by orchestras in Europe a lot. I just came across a little tidbit that Howard Shore's score for The Ring, what's it called? The Ring of, not the Hobbit, the Hobbit ring.
That ring, right.
That ring.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Is played more than any other American piece in Europe right now. More than Gershwin, more than Bernstein, more than Copland. Howard Shore's score to this movie.
But when you really listen to it, it's not just romantic symphonic writing. It's crazy, interesting tonalities and textures in the orchestra. It's actually much crazier than Lizzie Borden.
So from what you were saying, what do you suggest to composers and librettists about how far they may go for our American audiences?
They're willing to go far. I mean, I come in contact, we're dealing with 20 different composers this year. It's really the producers. I hate to say it, don't you agree? It's my colleagues in other companies are fearful of this kind of music for their audiences and what it'll do to their subscription box office audience. I think composers and creators are ready to be as far out or as clangy and dissonant as they can be to express themselves, but producers are still very fearful of programming this kind of music.
What subject matter do you think Americans want to see in their operas?
Subject matter.
Oh gosh, I mean, American themes always resonate, you know, Little Women, Of Mice and Men. I mean,
Great Gatsby.
Great Gatsby. I mean, really sort of seminal American themes seem to resonate deeply with a diverse group of people, a very diverse group of people.
So we like to see ourselves reflected in our own
I
operas.
think so. I think Nixon
That's
in
true.
China, you know, and Harvey Milk, I think those were sort of wonderful exceptions where audiences were so desirous of some political resonance, something that tapped into, you know, some cathartic thing they were thinking or feeling in their own lives, that those pieces resonated in a completely different way than, let's say, Susanna of Carlisle Floyd, you know. You know, The Mother of Us All, I think, is another thing that at the time that we did it, it really had some social and political, you know, relevance that people really embraced.
I thought now is a good time, speaking of American experiences, the opera Patience and Sarah, a different side of the American experience we can talk about after we've seen it.
Oh, right.
Would you roll Patience and Sarah, please?
Aren't you going to meeting? Are you sick? I'm not going, Edward. I'm expecting Sarah Dowling today. Sarah Dowling? She's a fine person. When you get to know her, lovely too. You shouldn't miss meeting. It's not a light matter to miss meeting. She's not fit. She's very fit. A very fine young woman who happens to have the gumption to help her family. I honor her for it. There's fit ways and there's unfit ways. There's something else. There's how I feel. You might not like it. I care for you. I want you to. I care for you too. I don't want you to stop. Is it really all right? Of course it's all right. Think about you every day in the clearing. I expect to see you again. Because I once did that one time. Think about you too. Thinking every shadow is new. Because that day there was this shadow in the corner of my eye. But when I looked, was you.
Now, of course, that was a piece that AOP premiered and commissioned. Am I
We commissioned it,
correct?
yeah.
And it was by Laurie, who wrote it?
Paula Kimper did the music, and Wendy Persons did the libretto. And that was Laurie Phillips, Michael Hendricks, and
Elaine Valby.
yeah, Elaine Valby.
Now, that was on a lesbian theme.
Yes.
Was that set in, what period was that set?
That was around the time of the early 1800s, based on a true story of a famous, now famous painter, sort of like a Grandma Moses type naturalistic painter, Elizabeth Wilson. And
Right.
she and her partner went pioneering in the Genesee mountain range, which is now called the Green Mountains, around where Glimmerglass is, basically, Glimmerglass Lake. And they went homesteading together, and it was against all convention, and you know, they were outcasts, but they were really just following the American dream, which was to claim land And then if you farmed it and were successful, you were allowed to have that land. That was the law back then. And they were trying to do that. And this novelist wrote up their story, and we did it.
Well, that is, again, just another American theme.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, Americana.
Well,
Right.
Harvey Milk, same thing.
Harvey Milk,
Yeah.
the opera by Wallace,
Yeah, Stuart Wallace, right.
Yeah.
Michael Corey.
Michael Corey's opera.
Yeah,
Right.
sadly, Glimmerglass never did the opera because, again, producers, even though I respect
Right.
Paul Kellogg very much, he was fearful of the subject matter
Right.
and didn't produce it at Glimmerglass.
What are the plans for AOP in the near future?
Well, one of the exciting things that's going on at AOP is a new innovative partnerships that we're forging. One of them is with Lauren. We're going to continue our classes with her. She's, people are beating the doors down to get into her classes.
It's been fun.
It's been
really
fantastic
Sounds
response.
wonderful.
Draining, but real fun.
And this is really the first time you've ever taught. like
Yeah.
that, so it's
If I sang, I'd take a class with you.
You don't have to sing to get a lot out of my class, which
Yeah.
is the beauty of the class. We're also going to work on a project we're calling Solo, where we're going to resurrect all of the wonderful monologues that were written for the great sopranos.
Oh,
And try to get some life back into them and work toward commissioning some new projects to sort of open up this idea, get people less sort of opera-centric and sort of, open up different venues for performing, which is, very much how I got started in the 80s, which is, a lot of performing in the East Village. And so we're going to try to get the Lee Hoybe thing done, Peter Maxwell Davies.
lots of great solo projects
Yeah.
that Lauren has been researching for years. And when we were talking about it, and she opened her binder, and I saw so many treasures of pieces.
It's a lot of really interesting stuff that was written that was just completely fallen out of fashion or just kind of collected so much dust on the shelf. The titles have become obscured, and Lee has a wonderful piece,
The Italian Lesson.
The Italian Lesson, all Ruth Draper monologues that I'm going to work
Amazing
on.
piece.
You're kidding.
No,
Amazing
I'm going to
piece.
do them, and
Oh
he flipped when I told him that I was going to take that piece
that's
on.
a
and
wonderful idea.
yeah, he flipped for it. He was really almost jumped off the ground. Actually, it was very funny. So.
They're giving me the high sign,
Okay.
when they go like that. And I'm sad to say we have to stop here, but that's what they're telling me. This has been an outstanding conversation. Thank you, Charles Jardin and Lauren Flanagan, and our home and studio audiences for joining us. And we hope to see you again soon for further conversation. Thank you.